Dr. Betty Govindan. Dr. Govindan is a prominent South African academic, a prolific researcher, author, and poet. Her expertise spans diverse subjects, including education, literature, theology, visual arts, interdisciplinary studies, and feminist studies. Notably, she served as the Dean of the Faculty of Education at the former University of Durban Westville and is currently an honorary research associate in the School of Social Sciences at UKZN. Dr. Govindan is deeply involved in the broader community with past memberships in significant literary and language associations and is a founding member of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. She also contributed to the Anglican Consultative Council and participated in the 1988 conference. We warmly welcome Dr. Govindan to share her perspectives. Thank you.
We inherit the cosmos, sky, sea, and hallowed earth, to hold in sacred trust. It is not in the state machine, but in self-rule, that true Swaraj is found, not in the gilded wealth of hoard houses, but in the scattering of grain on tilled soil. You and I are stewards of creation, threaded through with love. We find our calling in the dignity of nature and the manifold of work. What does it mean for you and me to scatter grain, literally and metaphorically? This is the challenge to all of us, wherever we may be, and for us who work in the university space. This poem that I composed and just shared draws from Gandhi's Hind Swaraj. Program facilitator, distinguished colleagues, and fellow presenters, I am especially privileged to share a few thoughts on Gandhi with you for this particular program. UKZN is my academic and intellectual home. I was a student on Salisbury Island. We called it the Bush College in those days, as a student in the 1960s, and then proceeded as a lecturer at UDW, and then on to UKZN for many years. In my presentation, I shall consider the influence of Gandhi as we celebrate Freedom Day in South Africa, how Gandhian principles might infuse the university and our teaching and research. I've written on many different aspects and angles of Gandhi, and I'd be happy to share that. But for today, I thought I will try to look at the way Gandhi may be considered at the university. It is very important that we reflect critically on Gandhi in the scope of our university work, particularly in the context of research, teaching, curriculum, and education, as we are constrained to work at the interface of the university and the world, both proximate and at large. We're all familiar with Gandhi and his impact on human and civil rights, peace and justice, and on the struggle for democracy in different spaces and times. And we know, given our South African history, that these spaces and areas are not adjunct to, but fundamental to the mission and work of the university in its knowledge project in all its dimensions, which is simultaneously theoretical and lived on the ground. It is especially fitting that we should consider these imperatives as we observe Freedom Day on Sunday in Durban, in South Africa, celebrating 31 years of our hard-won democracy. And you will agree that we have much work to still do in multiple spaces to achieve a just and equal society and world. I just wanted to check that the image of me and I'm audible. Is it fine?
Yes, yes.
Please go
Thank you.
ahead, Karen.
Gandhi and Mandela. Gandhian politics, among other aspects, influenced our long walk to freedom in South Africa. In his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela describes the effect that the passive resistance campaigns had on African resistance politics. And we know the dramatic moment when Mandela declared that passive resistance has failed us. And then the Mandela who emerged from prison on Robben Island in 1919. Elika Boma, who was born in Durban, a post-colonial scholar and professor of world literature, now based at Oxford, traces a relationship of affiliation between Mandela and Gandhi. And she writes, taking a chronological view of his career across 5 decades, from 1950 to 2000, we see Mandela tracing an ideological parabola away from his early Gandhiist phase towards the support for armed resistance, and then at the last, turning back to non-violent ideas of political negotiation and compromise. Rather than being a conclusive shift away from passive resistance, Mandela's move to armed struggle entailed a tacit recognition that non-cooperation could not thrive as a politics without the accompaniment of some form of militancy. 30 years on, he continued to see armed resistance as the means of moving to the negotiation table, while at the same time his shift towards a dialogical and dialogic ethic never involved a complete renunciation of political violence. We should also consider the way Luthuli and Tutu also mirrored this critical relationship with Gandhi and the way in which they understood just war. Some of these issues are considered in the book that Professor Kalpana Hiralal, an eminent historian at UKZN and a specialist on Satyagraha studies, and I edited to mark the 100th anniversary of Satyagraha, entitled 1913, Satyagraha, Passive Resistance and Its Legacy, published in New Delhi by Manohar Publishers. It's encouraging then to see the Nobel Peace Prize winners who have been influenced by Gandhi. And if nothing, that says a lot and says everything. In South Africa, we have Chief Albert Luthuli, who received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1960, and the first person on the African continent to be so honored. I've written about him and would be happy to share it on another occasion. Archbishop Tutu received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. Nelson Mandela was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 after he was released from prison in 1990, and a year before he became the first president of the democratic South Africa. Wangari Maathai from Kenya received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004. And in the United States, there were great peace activists such as Rosa Parks, Pauli Murray. I'm at the moment writing on Pauli Murray and Martin Luther King Jr. These civil rights leaders all spoke of Gandhi's influence on them. The work of Martin Luther King Jr. in the civil rights campaign is really noteworthy. And 2 of King's mentors went to meet Gandhi personally in India in 1936. King himself received the Nobel Prize in 1965. It is important to remember that Gandhi himself was influenced by noted Americans, by W.E.B. Du Bois and Henry David Thoreau in the United States. Barack Obama received the Nobel Prize in 2009, and he stated that Gandhi was a real hero of mine. And we have the Dalai Lama, an outstanding example to all of humankind from Tibet and India, who received the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1989. He also received the Gandhi Mandela Award in 2020 on Mandela's 106th birth anniversary. And in India, we have Kailash Satyarthi from India, who won the Nobel Prize in 2015. I don't know how many of us in the university know of his work, but it's an absolutely amazing example of working to eradicate child labor, the need for children's education across different spaces in the world. And we know the influence more broadly, and I'm sure that we will hear more of it in the next two presenters. But Lech Walesa, who won the Nobel Prize in 1983, we know of his brave resistance and civil disobedience in Poland, his leadership of the Solidarity Party, and we appreciate the way the political successes in Poland influenced Czechoslovakia, and which also led to the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Gandhian principles that are at the heart of change and revolution are Satyagraha, which is truth force, Swaraj, the welfare of all, Hind Swaraj, home rule or self-rule, and Swadeshi, self-sufficiency and self-reliance. These principles govern personal life and living, as well as the community, the nation, the continent, and the world. And we always have to see the way in which, the direction in which Gandhi's principles work from the private to the public. We also need to see how all of these principles are part of the knowledge project in all its dimensions in the university. Satyagraha literally means truth force, and the pursuit and practice of truth, you will agree, is the fundamental mission of the university. And we see now more than ever that truth is under attack. Pilate's question, what is truth, reverberates through space and time. A long time ago, when I was teaching at the Faculty of Education at UDW, we used the book Teaching as a Subversive Activity by Postman and Weingartner. And this book, published in 1969, is as relevant today as it was in those decades. In a course we called English Usage, we taught critical literacy, how to read the world critically, and we encouraged our students to have antennae that were, yes, crap detectors. A quote from that book is worth heeding today, some 50 years later. One way of looking at the history of the human group is that it has been a continuing struggle against the veneration of crap. And we know that this is truer now than ever. Further, in our quest for truth, for knowing, we have also learned the value of unknowing, of uncertainty. And I recall the work of our colleagues on the UDW campus and in the School of Education. We value the work of unknowing and of uncertainty. Yes, we must not forget that Gandhi encapsulated his entire life as experiments in truth. The Gandhian dialogic has influenced a whole range of nodes of intellectual work and pedagogy, which are open and exploratory and across sectors and borders in the Paula Freirean mode. And this is something we must rediscover and re-explore and claim in these times. The university and Gandhi and Gandhian thought. While Gandhi is described as a freedom fighter, social reformer, religious pluralist, and prophet, as Ramachandra Guha, the Indian historian and biographer of Gandhi, has stated, we also acknowledge that Gandhi was an intellectual. Gandhian thought and action flowed from the most abstract epistemological and methodological commitments, argues Akhil Bilgrami, an Indian philosopher now at Columbia University. We have to appreciate how Gandhi's thoughts became grounded. In the book, Intellectual Traditions in South Africa, Ideas, Individuals, and Institutions, edited by Peter Vale, Lawrence Hamilton, and Estelle Prinsloo, and published, incidentally, by UKZN Press. These are academics at the University of Pretoria, at Wits, and the University of Johannesburg. They have presented a critical survey of the intellectual histories in South Africa. It makes for very informative and instructive reading from the 17th century, and they include African nationalism, Afrikaner thinking, Black consciousness, different faith traditions, and they have included a chapter on Gandhian thought. It's important to see this in the context of intellectual traditions in South Africa. This chapter is written by Professor Uma Dupilia-Mestri, an historian and Gandhian scholar, who was incidentally a student and lecturer at UDW and is also Gandhi's great-granddaughter. As Peter Vale, one of the editors, states, only by rethinking the ideas that made us can we reimagine the world. And then in another book, Legends, People Who Have Changed South Africa for the Better, this is the copy I have here on my desk, by Matthew Blackman and Nick Dahl, published just 2 years ago. These are creative writers and artists based in Cape Town. They have included a range of legends from South Africa, and you'll be pleased to hear that among them are Olive Schreiner, Saul Plaatje, Sissy Gool, Steve Biko, Miriam Makeba, and also Thuli Madonsela. When we look more closely at Gandhi and his political work, his practice and teachings, we see how all the different facets that he espoused are closely connected to our work in the university and our work in the world. Gandhi's political activism emerged from his deep intellectual analysis of the world and of history. Indeed, Gramsci's term, organic intellectual, aptly describes Gandhi and his work, which touches many modes of thinking and action. While commendable work is being done, we should remember that there are still wide ranges and a wide range of fields at the university where research on Gandhi can be developed even further. We are privileged to have Professor Suresh Kumar, whose work touches many key nodes in our work at university level, and especially in the South. In a public lecture on 15th of March 2023, Jerry Rao, who is an Indian businessman and entrepreneur and CEO of a software company, raised some important points on Gandhi, the forgotten intellectual. Reflecting on the intellectual lineage of Gandhi and his drawing from multiple streams of thought is a rewarding exercise. Indeed, Gandhi is seen as having an encyclopedic range of interests. Gandhi bridged the gap between the world of ideas and the world lived on the ground, as I mentioned already. Indeed, his was a life of the mind, balanced with a life of flesh. In a poem I composed on Gandhi, I reflected the following: a heart of flesh, a heart that is the pulse of progress, goes back to the very source of cosmic music, to hear itself beat. So I'd like to just touch on a few areas at the university that we could then begin to think alongside with Gandhi. While our historians have largely worked on Gandhi, producing invaluable scholarship, and many of them have been connected with UDW, we should also encourage critical Gandhian research from a wider range of intellectual nodes. In his book, Economist Gandhi, The Roots and Relevance of the Political Economy of the Mahatma, Jerry Rao, whom I mentioned just now, states, Gandhian thought gives us much critique of capitalism across the spectrum, from left to right. Gandhi drew from Adam Smith, who was seen as the father of economics, and developed his own particular understanding of economics, combining his asceticism and anti-industrialism, and the influence of John Ruskin is unmistakable as well. Satyagraha went hand in hand with Savodhya, the welfare of all. This is the radical equality that Gandhi called for, and is a challenge to us who work at the university. And this is the poem I wrote entitled Savodhya, the welfare of all. Unto this last I give the same as unto the first. He who worked from the first hour is equal to he who works from the 11th. Both meet in the dignity of work and in the dignity of pay. The gift of bread for all is the bequest of peace for the world. And then there is the area of religion. How can we encourage more research on Gandhi and religion at university level in all our departments of religious studies? Gandhi was open to all faiths and drew from Hindu thought and scripture in particular. Gandhi in his teachings was able to give living expression to the different religious tenets. Mandy Goodhouse, also from UDW and UKZN, has traced the relationship of Gandhi and his Christian friends. Incidentally, my own church in Durban, St. Aidan's, the founder was the Reverend Dr. Lancelot Booth, who was a good friend and colleague working together with Gandhi in the city of Durban. It is good that we have Mr. Chetty from Religious Studies, who's on the panel this afternoon. Then there's the whole area of women and feminisms. I've written on the influence of Gandhi on women's roles in society and the public domain in my book, Sister Outsiders, and especially in my chapter on Dr. Gunham in my book, Sister Outsiders. In fact, this is how I began to appreciate the impact of Gandhi more fully when I did my PhD study. And among the chapters I have are on Ansuya Singh, Dr. Gunham, and Fatima Mir, who were particularly influenced and who practiced Gandhian values. Professor Hiralal, Kalpana Hiralal, has done much research on women and satyagraha, and her work on Sisters in the Struggle shows a great deal of the impact of nonviolence and passive resistance in the work of Sisters in the Struggle. We also know of the influence of Gandhi on the work of the Chipko movement. And then there's also much reflection on masculinities from a Gandhian perspective in relation to nonviolence. These are critical studies that are certainly worth exploring. Then there is much that can be considered on Gandhi and law. We should not forget that Gandhi was a barrister. Gandhi practiced in both Durban and in Johannesburg. Charles D. Salvo writes about Gandhi, an attorney at law, the man before the Mahatma. And he teaches, DeSalvo teaches law courses at West Virginia University on civil disobedience, bioethics and the law, civil procedure and trial advocacy, looking at the background of Gandhi and what he did in his time and place. Gandhi's development of civil disobedience precisely emerged from his legal background, and it's worth exploring. Professor Steven Pinker, a psychologist and public intellectual from Harvard, spoke out only last week against totalitarian dictatorship that attempts to neutralize criticism, and his criticisms are based on his reading of the law. Then there's also Gandhi, the philosopher, and in his book, Gandhi's integrity, thinking radically with Gandhi on religion, caste, capital, liberalism, science, and culture, Akhil Bilgrami, whom I mentioned already, presents the framework of Gandhi's thoughts that include his critique of capitalist modernity, raising fundamental questions about his relevance for today. He draws attention to Gandhi as an exemplar, one who set examples of his principles. I'd like to touch on rural education quickly. It is good that we in South Africa have a rural education policy under the Department of Basic Education, and that's UKZN has been working in this field for a while now. I want to encourage us to press on. Gandhi had said famously that India lives on in its villages, and we are committed to incorporating the periphery and addressing its challenges. In his book, The Nation and Its Fragments, Partha Chatterjee shows that nationalism in Asia and Africa emerged from the margins and not the other way around, as in the West. The importance of rural education cannot be overemphasized, and the universities have much work to do in this respect. Given our history of spatial apartheid and spatial engineering, we appreciate the way it endures into the present day, both in our urban and rural spaces. And we also appreciate the way the globe has been divided into the North and the South. And then there is early childhood development and education. Gandhi started schools near Tolstoy Farm and stressed the value of early childhood development. Gandhi delivered a speech in 1931 at the Montessori Training College in London, understanding only too well the value of peace education and peace education pedagogy for children from an early age and its impact on the body politic. In calling for peace education and skills education, Professor Crane Sedain, one of our colleagues and emeritus professor at UCT, in his chapter Drawing on Gandhi to Construct a Pedagogy for Peace in South Africa, in this book, Gandhi Now, edited by Elaine Sedain and Susan Russell, reflects on what kind of education will contribute to the production of lower levels of personal and social violence. Sedain calls for satya and ahimsa, a commitment to truth and a sensibility of compassion into our educational world. I'd like to challenge us with the role of manual labor, the role of spinning. Colleagues might well ask, how is this related to the university and our work and all our intellectual pursuits? This is a convoluted debate, which I would love to have at a future point. But there are many facets to this, and it is worth exploring rather than deciding that this is not our terrain. We have to have trenchant debates on Gandhi and the charkha in our present age of AI and the fourth industrial revolution. Doug Hill, a critic of the overwhelming technology of our contemporary world, is in responding to the present time states. Spinning was a catalyst of rural mindedness and thus an antidote to the giganticism and exploitation that were, in Gandhi's view, inherent in the industrial capitalism. The spinning wheel was a symbol of self-reliance, economic self-sufficiency, and independence, and a path to spiritual and social transformation of the self and of the community and of the nation and beyond of civilization. Gandhi's activities like spinning were seen as a direct response to the dominance and hegemony of Western practices demanding speed. Gandhi, in fact, said as well, let the poet spin. And even though we write poetry, as Tagore has inspired us, we also have to deal with the challenge of what spinning in its symbolism and in its actual practice teaches us. Similarly, in questioning our penchant for speed, Gandhi encouraged slow reading. Isabel Hofmeyr, who was a professor of African literature at Wits and who was incidentally at UDW a long time ago, has written the book Gandhi's Printing Press, Experiments in Slow Reading. My copy is in Durban, but it's important to read it to see how Gandhi educated his readers through Indian opinion in slow reading and writing as a way to engage in self-formation by cultivating self-discipline and ethical values. Again, the whole question of the lure of industrial speed was being raised, and spinning, like music and art, and meditation are all challenges to us and what they teach us in terms of the deeper truths that we seek. This poem that I have composed tries to capture some of this. As you ply the thread on the spinning wheel, wrapped in contemplation, hands and minds in placable unison, you come to a hospitality of the heart towards yourself and your neighbor. And in another poem called The Song of Ascents, it is not in erudite thoughts, but in the sinews of a spinning wheel. Serving my neighbor, I see truth's cause and freedom's gain. In women's sighs, its liturgy, and widow's tears an altar for the sacrament of love. I have a section on environmental studies, but I will try to move to the conclusion. And here again, Gandhi is speaking about our care for the environment, the decolonization of the Anthropocene, and moving into the way in which we understand post-humanism. We have to see how Gandhi was understanding this as the idea of the unalienated life, how Gandhi was critiquing our becoming alienated from ourselves, from nature, and critiquing the predatory response to nature and the extractive economies that we have generated. I'd like to spend a moment talking about decoloniality and Gandhi. Gandhi led the 4,000-kilometer salt march in 1930 to challenge the British-imposed salt tax. This was 95 years ago. Gandhi called for the British to quit India in 1942. And this decolonization came with the broader call for decoloniality. We rightly speak a great deal after 1994 about decoloniality at university. This is an important dimension of our current work, and I'm privileged myself to be part of the UKZN decolonial network. Venor Nathan, in his essay, Decolonizing the Self, Gandhi and Fanon on Violence and Agency, states that decolonizing the nation is ultimately about decolonizing the self. And both Gandhi and Fanon were calling for this, even if their strategies differed. Colonization has resulted in disalienation from self, and the imperative was to reclaim the suppressed self. Decolonization then is about reclaiming the humanity of the colonized. Gandhi drew attention to cognitive slavery, as Christopher Lee from Wits has reminded us. Gandhi didn't think it was enough to campaign for freedom from colonial rule. It was necessary to do with ideas and methods that were not derivative of the frameworks of thinking and the conceptual vocabulary of colonialism. Even if the British left, India had to address a form of cognitive slavery, which he thought was just as corrosive as the physical presence of the British. Etchell Mbemba from Wits, in his work on necropolitics, the critique of Black reason, has also shifted the center of gravity to the south. We appreciate the impact Gandhi's example has had on independent struggles across the world. In Africa, Ngugi wa Thiong'o published Decolonizing the Mind in 1983. And it is interesting that in his novel, A Grain of Wheat, published in 1967, the inmates in the prison in Kenya were reading Gandhi. The freedom fighter Kihika was reading of all that was happening in Burma, in Egypt, in Palestine, and in India. And we know these are places of ferment to this day. And Ngugi writes, wasn't Mahatma Gandhi a saint leading the Indian people against the British rule? Kiaka fed on these stories. He had visions of himself, a saint, leading Kenyan people to freedom and power. In another essay I've written about the influence of Gandhi on the African continent. Amid the violence or violations in our society, alongside physical violence and violations, structural violence that expresses itself in the violence of poverty and inequality, we have epistemic violence, which is what we've been especially concerned about at the university. We need to see how it is part of a cycle of violence, the way the one leads to the other. In this decolonial spirit, Gandhi spoke against the hegemony of English and championed indigenous knowledge. In this decolonial spirit, Gandhi called for true Swaraj, which was self-rule in the political sense, but also Swaraj at the local and the personal level. In Politics, Ethics, and the Self, rereading Gandhi's Hind Swaraj, Bonaventura de Souza Santos has emphasized the importance of learning from the South. And he lists an alternate canon of intellectuals from the South, which includes figures like Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, the Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, Rigoberto Menchu, and Upendra Baxi. The last two may not be so well known, and it will be important to note that Rigoberto Menchu, Guatemalan human rights activist and Nobel Peace Prize winner in 1992 for her work among indigenous peoples, and she received the Gandhi Mandela Award in 2020. And Upendra Baxi is a legal scholar, social and human rights activist, a professor of law and development, and a former vice chancellor of the University of Delhi, has written of the threats to human rights from technoscience and a machinist world in our post-human world. Again, we appreciate the organic intellectuals from the South and Gandhi being in their company. Thank you for your patience. In conclusion, my poem, Satyagraha. You stood tall and still, clad in loin cloth, stripped bare of pomp and the garlands of adulation. You took command and spoke in clear and simple words, believing in the force of your ideas rather than of a gun. Soul force is not the weapon of the weak, but the weapon of the strong. Soul force, when will and heart and body and mind work in unison. Soul force, that alone could prevail against the gates of hell. Fired not with hate for the other, but with love for wholeness and humanity, with the strength to say enough. We will not be trampled on like dust. We will be free. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Govindan, for that insightful presentation. In her thought-provoking presentation, Dr. Govindan has explored the enduring relevance of Hind Swaraj and its influence on research, curriculum design, and the role of the university in society. And drawing on Gandhi's philosophy, he highlighted how the pursuit of truth, which was central to Gandhi's life and which he described as an experiment with truth, should remain a fundamental task of the university. And she also emphasized Gandhi's concept of Sarvodaya, the welfare of all, as a guiding principle that can inform uh, ethical and socially responsive education. She also, in her talk, noted the evolution of Nelson Mandela's political philosophy, observing how he moved from a resistance based approach to one that increasingly appreciated the power of nonviolence, although he acknowledged that political violence was at times deemed necessary. So the presentation, I think, underscores how Gandhi's legacy continues to challenge contemporary academia to reimagine knowledge production not merely as a technical expertise, but as a moral and transformative pursuit that is grounded in nonviolence, self-rule, and the collective good. So thank you very much, Dr. Govindan. Your contributions have set a wonderful stage for our webinar. We are going to proceed now uh, to our next speaker, and we have with us Professor Suresh Kumar. Professor Kumar is a distinguished scholar specializing in African studies, and he has been professor at the University of Delhi since 2012. His extensive academic career includes various teaching and research positions at the University of Delhi and the Eritrean Institute of Technology and Science Education in Eritrea. Professor Kumar has been actively involved in the research project on religion, yoga, and education in India and South Africa. He's also a member of the UNESCO Research Group on African and Brazilian Knowledge, Education, and Histories, and has contributed to the Hashim Mbita Research Project on the role of India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Yugoslavia in the Southern African liberation struggle. His professional affiliations include memberships in CODESRIA, the Confederation of Indian Industry Africa Committee, and the Indo-African Chamber of Commerce and Industries. Professor Kumar's expertise in African studies, international relations, and social sciences makes him a key figure in Indo-African academic and policy engagements. We are honored to have Professor Kumar with us today to share with us his thoughts on Gandhi. Over to you, Professor Kumar.
Good afternoon, all of you, and I thank Professor Lokesh Maharaj inviting me to speak on Gandhi, and I will speak on today sustainability, self-reliance, and education lessons from Gandhi. So first, when we look at the sustainability or the Brundtland report of 87 that mentioned sustainability and talked about our common future for all people, is it a real story? When we look at Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, he believes and practices a sustainable, holistic life in the company of nature and friendly environment. And the fundamental principle of sustainable Gandhian life, believing in most important non-violence, ahimsa, and that means ahimsa parmo dharma. It means that the humanity should respect the feelings of all creatures and behave with love and grace. Non-violence is the biggest weapon to solve all the disputes in the world. It is the time to respect non-violence And for example, we should invite Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and different terrorist groups to discuss their option and establish a sustainable, non-violent world. Moreover, Professor Wynne said, love and law and love then are not alternatives. Mercy and forgiveness are binding and obligatory, not optional extras. Non-violence is the best solution to save and strengthen the life, the donation towards life. In Hindi, it is called Pran Dan, is the wisest technique to strengthen green environment friendly world. Gandhi said that the avoidance of harm to any living creature in thought or deed, this is the only way to solve the established problems and work for the sustainable life. Gandhi believes in the preservation of forests, plants, birds and animals, as all of them keeps alive. Cutting trees and plants, killing birds and animals is an act of violence resulted into unsustainability. Gandhian sustainability came from Bharatiya religious text of Vedas, Sri Bhagavad Gita, and Ramayana. When we are talking about Gandhian idea of self-reliance, it connects the physical body and the spiritual, the physical body and the mind that make a union. Gandhian self-reliance unites the individual soul with the cosmic spirit through physical disciplines and mental disciplines. Self reliance is the product of history of ancient India spirituality and strengthened Gandhian self sufficiency. Gandhian talked about self sufficiency in terms of self reliance and in terms of the Gandhian education. The most important part of the education, Gandhi believes in truth and honesty and propagated Satyameva Jayate. A person can achieve anything in life by speaking truth and practice honesty in life. Gandhian education propagates that the best way to initiate Truth Sutra is the home. It is the time to speak truth in school, with friends, with teachers, parents, husband, wife, children, and with family. True education will establish truth in the society gradually. Any human being, by practicing truth in life, will able to know the real importance of any worldly, physical, material thing and self-knowledge. By attaining any material thing and explaining its real importance in life is a real difficult task for any human being is accepted to all. Talking about sustainability, Gandhi idea of conservation of earth, it is portrayed beautifully in his book on Hind Swaraj of 1909. Modern industrial civilization become an utmost concern for Gandhian way of life, connecting ecology and environment. The union, physical and spiritual of an individual life, never separated in the from the body, and this union of sorry, this union Gandhi believes and says Advaita. It is equally applicable to animal and plant life. Then, talking about the Sarvodaya is the basis of Gandhian philosophy of life, that means well being of all. Gandhi profoundly mentions in his autobiography to see the universal and all pervading spirit of truth face to face, one must be able to love the meanest creation as oneself. Gandhi believes in Upanishads and mentions Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kashit Dukh Bhav Bhavet. It means May all human beings, plants and animals be happy and peace. May no one suffer from illness. May all see what is auspicious. May no one suffer. Gandhi's sustainability of Indian society believes in Vasudhai Kutumbakam. It is a Sanskrit verse in Hindu text. It means Vasudeva means the earth, Kutumbakam means the family. So Vasudeva Kutumbakam is translated as the word is one family. So this word is one family, and Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, it is applicable to Indian society, to the world society. The latest example of Vasudhai Kutumbakam, India vaccine matri program during the COVID-19. India delivered more than 300,000 vials of COVID-19 vaccine to African countries, 200,000 to SAARC countries, 50,000 to Asian countries, more than 500,000 vaccines to the global society, only believing on the Gandhian practices of Sarva Bhavantu Sukhina and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Then Gandhi, the second point, he believes in truth and honesty. In Hindi, it is says, Satyameva Jayate. Gandhian philosophy emphasized that the global humanity listens, speaking, and reading about truth since their tender age, but failed to adopt in real life. The sole reason behind it that everybody is running behind to collect unlimitedly worldly material things wholeheartedly round the clock, which leads to think, speak, and implement a true lie in the life. So there is no single example in the world history that glimpses the person attains moksha based on true lie. So, speaking honestly does not consider a noble act that raises the question that how, where, and when to use the truth. The best way to initiate Truth Sutra is the home. It is the time to speak truly with parents, with all family members, and gradually it will lead to society. So any human being, by practicing truth in life, will able to know the real importance of any worldly physical material thing and self knowledge. So by attaining any material thing and explaining the real importance in life is a real difficult task for any human being that is accepted by all. So comparing to it, a liar person never becomes a brave person in life. One fearful person cannot concentrate in life. One cannot become a wise person without full concentration. How cleverly a liar person behave. His acts are caught by an honest person in this world only. So it is rightly pointed out when Gandhi said Satyameva Jayate means a person can achieve anything in life by speaking truth and practice honesty in life. Generally, the people lie before the government that spoils the environment of the concerned offices. It further leads to attract towards illegal means to earn more and more money. Gandhian programs suggest to the well aware learned community to adopt a sustainable policies such as sustainable use of natural resources, including water and environment conservation, and reduction of direct impact on environment or reduction of carbon footprint through the yogic sutras. Responsible control on production of industries that rely heavily on natural resources. So the yoga application to ensure reduction in carbon footprint through walk-in daily life that will help in minimum use of petrol or diesel vehicles. Then Gandhi talked about the another very important point that is the non stealing. In Hindi, it is asteya. And Gandhi propagated that never touch anybody material things. Don't provoke others to take the things and never have any desire to keep anybody's thing is known stealing. This may pose problem in implementing in real life in today's world. The owner's consent is must, very important. The owner's consent is must before taking anything is the real solution. With consent, one take the material things even in his or her absence. So following are the benefits of non-stealing that directly deals with the sustainability, such as a person practices non-stealing is full of peace, happiness, and lives patiently. This practice is against the consumer culture that directly hit the blind race of industrial products. One may live happily, peacefully, and prosper life by practicing non-stealing in life. The consumer culture leads to stealing. Number of youth are caught red-handed, stealing shirts, trousers, shoes, mobile phones, and other material things in the big malls throughout the world. So, non-stealing gives importance to honesty and curbing corruption in life. The practice of non-stealing explains the efficient and proper use of natural things in a best way. So it will stop the misuse of natural material and help in sustaining the environment. A person of non-stealing gets respect in the heart of everybody that will help to control the consumer market culture. Then Gandhiji focuses on the non possessiveness, aprigraha. So, this idea of non possessiveness, Gandhi said it means all the unimportant physical material as well as ideas should be discarded, should be kept away from the heart. Words and body is known as aprigraha or non greed. The non possessiveness explains that a human being should free from greed, hoarding, and collecting. Does human being really need more shoes, another car, or hold the conversation every time? Make human being life as simple as possible. There's a big debate on need and greed. A person need is other person's greed. A human being essentially relates to bread, cloth, and shelter. The role of education and other qualifications strengthens the human being's professional life, but the essential needs are the same. Similarly, giving the example of agricultural land which is used for the production of different crops, but the overproduction on that land leads to infertility of land. This is the result of possessiveness. If we see the Gandhian life with the minimum clothes, with a stick, with minimum bare needs of utensils for having food, and the whole life it shows Gandhian sustainability, the non-possessiveness, aprigraha. So, talking about the self-reliance of Gandhi, Gandhian self-reliance means self-sufficiency, and that rightly starts from the village society. Gandhi always gave importance to a village. The villager should develop a high degree of skill that prepares them to command our local market outside of village. Gandhi says, and I quote, men with a high degree of skill and artistic talent will contribute in the economic progress of the village. There will be village poets, village artists, village architects, linguists, and research workers. The reconstruction of the villages should be organized on a permanent basis. Craft, art, health, and education should all be integrated into one scheme. It covers the whole education of the individual from the time of conception to the moment of death. Unquote. Similarly, Gandhi wrote about self-sufficiency in the Harijan newspaper and talked about it, insisted on the self-sufficiency of Indian villages. Self-sufficiency advocated by him as a basic principle of life because dependence brings in exploitation, which is the essence of violence, hinsa. The poor exploited by the rich in the village, by the city, and the underdeveloped country by the developed one due to lack of self sufficiency. Gandhi suggested that village should be self sufficient, that is, they should produce their own food, clothing, and other articles needed for meeting their basic needs. He insisted on the promotion of village or cottage industries and handicrafts because they can provide employment necessary to meet basic needs of the villages and also facilitate village self-sufficiency. India has successfully come out of 2000 economic recession of the world economic recession and maintained its economy only and only because of Gandhian self-sufficiency, self-reliance. So Gandhi talked about this self-reliance and he explained that not only the British rule but modern civilization is also responsible for real cause of economic stress, that is poverty and unemployment. If the British rule were replaced tomorrow by the Indian rule based on modern methods, India would not be better. Gandhi envisaged India's salvation in the revival of its ancient civilization. Gandhi's self sufficiency and non violent village society could only be built on cooperation on cooperative basis. Gandhi strongly recommended cooperative farming, which should save labor, capital tools, and provide employment to all adult villagers and increase productions also. Gandhi said, we must attempt to prevent further fragmentation of land and encourage people to take to cooperative farming. Gandhi noted that when dependence becomes necessary in order to help society to maintain good order, it is no longer dependence, but it becomes cooperation. Gandhi also favored spinners cooperative and cooperative cattle farming for promoting the national interest. The earlier speaker, Professor Govindan, has talked much about the spinners, so I will not repeat that one. So, talking about the sanitation, Gandhi focused that sanitation is prerequisite of a formation of a healthy society. Only healthy society can contribute in the construction of self-sufficient nation. Along with education, village sanitation is a vital part of village life. Lack of healthy people affects Swaraj. Every village worker must have a knowledge of the general principles of health. Gandhi mentions it is the duty of the social workers to explain the simple rules of health and hygiene to the villagers. The way of life to the social workers should be a living message to others in health and hygiene. They should maintain good health by following the disciplined life, and that will make village clean from dust, dirt, and bad smell. Influenced from Ruskin and Tolstoy, Gandhi developed his idea of bread labor for self-reliance. Professor Govindan has mentioned about the why the charkha is important, why the spinning is important. So I like to mention only that each man must do physical labor to earn his bread. Gandhi called this as a bread labor and mentions God has empowered every individual the capacity to work and earn more than his daily needs. The needs of the body should be supplied by the work of the body. One who does not work will not have the right to his bread. Even lawyers, engineers, scientists, professors, poets, playwrights will have to perform physical labor apart from their intellectual labor to earn their needs. Where there is a recognition of the theory of bread labor, there is no scope of unemployment. It guarantees self reliant and sufficient food, clothing, and shelter to everyone. There would be no disease in the society because the physical labor will keep the man healthy. So this I bread labor I connect with the Spedic as well. Then talking about the Gram Swaraj as a part of the self-reliant, the Gram Swaraj means the self-rule, and Gandhi refers to this self-rule and growth of every human being. He mentions that the Swaraj or self-rule connected with the notion of Swaraj in modern India. The term Swaraj exclusively identified by Dadabhai Naoroji, B.C. Tilak, and Shri Aurobindo with the goal of national independence. Gandhi found the close connection between Swaraj and Swadeshi, between self-government and national self-dependence. Gandhi derived the very notion of communal self-reliance from his doctrine of individual self-rule and showed how the pursuit of Swaraj must necessarily involve the acceptance of Gandhi. So uh, Swaraj it means self-rule and self-restraint. He defined Swaraj in terms of individual and nation. Swaraj means self-rule of the individuals. In terms of national Swaraj, it is the sum total of all activities which go up to build an ideal state based on moral force. The people of such state are conscious of their modern strength. Gandhi tried to identify the concept of Swaraj state with the Rama Rajya, the ideal state of Lord Shri Rama. And talking about the self-sufficiency in the Gram Swaraj, every member, as Professor Govindan said, every member of the family should play the spinning, should play the chuck and spin. The village weaver will play the loom and produce the cloth necessary for the village. Similarly, the village should produce its own rice, vegetables, food, and clothing will not have to be imported into the village from outside. It means a particular lifestyle, the lifestyle of simple living and high thinking. So, the spirit of Swadeshi guiding man's economic behavior leads to natural love and perseverance for local products and an attitude to services to the immediate neighbors. So the consumers for their requirements must buy from the local producers and support the local farmers and artisans such as weavers, carpenters, cobblers, potters. So the adherence of the principle of Swadesh leads to natural economic order and harmony. So this is the ultimate society, the ultimate aimed at an exploitation free economic system for India. Gandhi suggested the concept of self sufficient autonomous village. Now, the government has adopted this as a part of decentralization of power, which ensures an exploitation free system for rural development, and that we have seen in India as well as in South Africa also the decentralization. I like to quote the Ramadevi, and she said Gandhi put forward the view of autonomous, self-sustaining villages called Gram Swaraj. Gandhi believed that this Gram Swaraj, formed by the local people, could effectively work for the development of the village. I like to mention here the Article 39 of the Indian Constitution that allows the equal right for men and women for their livelihood and avoiding the child labor strictly in the Indian Constitution. So, in Gandhi's conception, the inhabitants of the village should grow sufficient food grain for them. They should make sufficient clothes and should run some village industries The village should provide playgrounds for the children and facilitates for cultural and social intercourse of the elders. Talking about the Gandhian education, Gandhian developed the idea of, and he said, Nai Talim. It is in Urdu. Nai Talim means a new education for the all-round drawing of the best in mind, body, and spirit of the man and children. Gandhi said, literacy in itself is no education. His philosophy of education, based on his experiments with physical, literary, and moral training at the Tolstoy Farm in South Africa. The Professor Govindan has already mentioned about the vocational training, and I will not repeat that. But I like to emphasize that the national education policy of India, introduced in 2020, has introduced the Gandhian idea of skill development, entrepreneurship, and endorsed as a part of the curriculum in the four-year undergraduate curriculum. Talking about the restructuring of the education, Gandhi has written a lot about education in the Young India, in the Navjivan, Harijan Sevak, and the Harijan newspaper. And Gandhi emphasized on education as a vehicle for change for him. Education is knowledge, and knowledge leads to empowerment. Gandhi was of strong opinion that education can only change the destiny of millions of backward, marginalized, and women. Education will be compulsory up to the final basic course as far as possible. Every activity will be based on cooperative. Then Gandhi talked about Bunyadi Siksha ethics, means basic education ethics, morality, and sanity in education. And Gandhi focused on this in the Varda conference on Indian education in the year 1937. And Gandhi mentions in that conference that education is a lifelong process. This process ends with one's last breath. All human beings, child, an adolescent, a young, and an old, are within its ambit. So Gandhi said education is a process of acknowledging and developing the virtues one already possesses within. So this virtues has a special meaning here. It is a process of making life innovative, lofty, and momentous based on the development of self virtues. Education is, according to its real meaning and basic spirit, the way to achieve salvation, moksha. With education, one can finally attain liberation. The literacy, Gandhi said, Akshar Janana, to know the words, learning in a school and study, internship and research in a college or a university according to described syllabi at different levels, which eventually completes with obtaining a certificate or a degree, is not the essence of education. It is not the end or the goal of education. It is just a part of it. It is just an essential part of the process of education. It is well proved from programs like adult education conducted under the guidance and supervision of Mahatma Gandhi himself with the purpose of making the people of even older age literate. So Gandhian technique about education. Then the most important technique he talked about the concept of satyagraha, the principle of truth and non-violence. Satyagraha would be a method for the peaceful resolution of disputes and conflicts. This will remove conflicts and disharmony. So, the practice of truth and non-violence, in principle, is the smallest way possible to make a great contribution in bringing peace and harmony in the society. Satyagraha always serves as a great inspiration to the people of all generations of India and South Africa. Gandhi mentions and highlighted It is not possible for ordinary human being to practice brahmacharya, being a person of purity, chastity, and non-lust, and simple living in the age of scientific and technological development. But the usefulness of truth and non-violence will always be relevant. The goal of Satyagraha is to establish prosperity, welfare, and development in India and South Africa. Gandhi used Satyagraha to protest peacefully against the colonial governments, whether it was in India and Satyagraha, in India and South Africa. Satyagraha is a method of hard changing of the opponent. Eventually, it will lead to maintain peace and harmony in the society. So this is all about the sustainability, self-sufficiency in education, and I would like to conclude now that Gandhi's vision initiate with the village and end with the global society. Gandhi believes that the real people, whether it is India, South Africa, any other part of the world, people lives in the villages, and India and South Africa can't be developed without the development of village of India and South Africa. There has to be a grassroots development. Gandhi highlighted that the process of development in India and South Africa should begin from the village level. Gandhi always propounded that agriculture should be supported by some subsidiary occupations like beekeeping, animal husbandry, khadi, paper making, mud utensils making, homeopathy, Ayurvedas, and other medical occupations. Gandhi advocated that women should contribute in agriculture and subsidiary industries or by playing spinning, charkha. Gandhi wanted every home to possess a spinner, which will enable the use of local productive resources and manpower in villages. Education, health, sanitation were the focus of the development of the villages. The believer of Satyagraha, Swadeshi, non-violence, and truth want to accomplish goal of a sustainable, decent, just and equitable society, and wants to see an end to injustice, tyranny, corruption, and the exploitation of men by ruling governments. Gandhi was concerned about the sustainability development, self-reliant, and the global peace in the world. So self-reliance, self-sufficiency is the basis of Gram Swaraj. That means it to establish self-reliant Ramarajya in the governance of the village. That is the dream of Gandhi's, to establish Ramarajya in the villages, in the country, and in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kumar, for sharing your valuable expertise and research with us. Your insights are greatly appreciated. Our final speaker today is Mr. Shay Chetty. Mr. Chetty holds a Master of Arts degree from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. His research interests include Hinduism, Asian studies, and comparative religious studies. And his recent academic work was a work that he did on the transgressive nature of Shiva, an investigation into the transgressive manifestations of the divine Shiva in Hinduism. We are pleased to welcome Mr. Chetty to present his perspectives on Gandhi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maharaj. And thank you to the previous two speakers, Professor Kumar and Professor Govindan, for their presentations. While I was listening, I realized that I had to go through my own presentation and do a lot of cutting because I didn't want to repeat what's been said. They've been very thorough in their insights and they definitely are my seniors in terms of their vast knowledge of Gandhi. And Professor Kumar was quite extensive in his discussion of many of these principles that Gandhi was believed in and lived. Um, so the previous year, I had the great opportunity to visit India. I was invited to go to the Jain. It was a Jain Institute, International Society for Jain Studies in Pune, and I was able to spend a month there to learn about Jainism. There was a great deal that I didn't know, and it was a wonderful opportunity to learn more about that. But during this day, I also got the opportunity to visit the Gandhi Memorial Museum in Pune, and it was where Gandhi and many of his associates were under house arrest for a long time, and you could find all the many of the items that they had used, the shoes, the bed that they slept on, and then further to that, you would find the ashes of Gandhi present there as well. So that was a very powerful experience, and I'm quite grateful for it. But to just mention that, I must say I'm not a scholar of Gandhi. I'm actually new to learning about the details of Gandhi and his life and his mission. And so I'm grateful that Professor Maharaj welcomed me to just maybe enter the discussion and not only speak, but also learn more about Gandhi, Gandhian principles, and so on. My interest in Gandhi then is, he has an extensive life involved in politics and movements of liberation, the struggle movements in South Africa in the early 1900s, and then going further into India. But I am very curious about Gandhi, the spiritual and religious man, and what made this figure Mahatma the great soul. My feeling is that if we can understand the nature of the principles that Gandhi lived by, these religious and spiritual principles, we gain more insight into the man, and also we gain more insight into how we move forward in this world when it comes to issues of peace studies. And it's peace not only in the external world, which is sorely needed today with all the wars, but it's the inner peace. I think it starts with this inner peace that needs to be generated by individuals who actually walk the path of people like Gandhi, and who live by these sacred principles of Satya, Ahimsa, and so on. So I'll proceed now with my presentation, my PowerPoint presentation. I'll share screen, and then maybe we can just go through this gradually, and I can maybe touch on some of the ideas as I'm going through these slides. All right, so my presentation is called Mahatma Gandhi, Truth, Nonviolence, and Social Change. It's an exploration of Satya, Ahimsa, and the impact on social transformation and justice in our current age. It's not, since I cut a great deal of it, it's not as extensive as I originally wanted it to be. There's really a few key principles that I would like to get into. Maybe with the Q&A session, we can discuss more about these concepts. All right. Okay. few images, a few beautiful images that I found of Gandhi, which puts into perspective what was actually taking place during his life. All right, so the aim of this presentation is I'm looking at Gandhi's contribution to social transformation and social justice in alignment to his ideas of truth and nonviolence, which combined together produced the Satyagraha movement, and also the ideas of having compassion and generosity towards all living beings, where we have a focus on the welfare of all. So that itself is a core spiritual belief that you find universal to all religions, the sense of compassion, of going beyond the individual, going beyond individual selfishness. And I think that's at the core and heart of individuals like Gandhi in terms of trying to live truth, trying to live nonviolence, and trying to promote qualities of peace, generosity, and harmony. So his principal ideas are Satya, Ahimsa. On the basic level, we can see Satya as referring to truth and Ahimsa to nonviolence. So we have the basic surface level of concepts like this, but as with Hindu philosophical ideas and concepts, there's always an esoteric underlying current to all these terms, which contain a vast reservoir of meaning and knowledge. So we are going to examine these principles in alignment to Hindu philosophy, and more especially, as I've noticed from the other speakers, and the questions that have been raised, people seem to be very interested in the practical application. They want to know, we know all these things about Gandhi. I'm sure, I will be going through some of the struggle marches and the events that Gandhi participated in, and I'm sure the vast majority of the audience is already well aware of many of these ideas, but maybe the discussion later in the Q&A is actually the practical application, the means of living and embodying these kinds of principles. So for Gandhi, he spoke about, he had written, truth is God. From the Hindu philosophical perspective, there are many different traditions within Hindu spirituality, but all of them seem to be centered, many different pathways. You've probably all heard of one God, many paths, or one truth, many paths. So there's this entire focus, despite the different traditions and different pathways, there's a focus on truth and what is truth. And for Gandhi, the truth is God. God is this, the ultimate reality, the supreme reality is this truth. So truth was central to the heart of Gandhi's life and work. It was central to his philosophy, the political movements, social justice. And it's from this core idea that I think we need to understand everything else. It's like a body, and everything else that comes out of this body are the limbs, the legs, and so on. And it's the heart of Gandhi's movement, it's the heart of his beliefs. So we're going to proceed with these ideas of truth, and then also how that is in alignment with the idea of non-violence, ahimsa. So Gandhi wrote, I actually wanted to get an image of Gandhi's actual writing, but I couldn't seem to find it. He'd actually written, truth is my God and non-violence is the means to attain it. So in that sense, there is actually non-violence is for Gandhi is the practical movement towards truth. Ahimsa is the first step in that sense towards satya, towards truth, towards uprightness. And so that itself is quite interesting to consider, that the very first step that we need to take is having this sense, this peaceful nature that finds the idea of unjust violence abhorrent. And this is the gateway and the path to truth. All right, so that is the first very step. So satya is more than just honesty. It can accept truth as this ultimate reality. And it is that ultimate reality that Gandhi continuously bowed before and surrendered before. And if we look at some of the writings of Gandhi, he would speak, I think he wrote about how he wanted to surrender so deeply that he would surrender to the dust and the grains of sand on the ground. And in that way, it was surrender to God or Vishnu from his perspective. And I want to go further later on, a little later on, we can go into discussion, is this quality of surrender and Gandhi's understanding and view of reality, that the reality and the world before us itself, for Gandhi, was God, the very world around us. And that's why it was so easy for him in that sense to surrender and bow before everything, even the grain of sand, to be more humble than the dust of the earth, which was part of his aims and some of the things he wrote about. So Gandhi equated truth with God and believed in integrity in thought, word, and action. And there's a if you speak to some gurus, spiritual masters, they will speak about how in ancient times people were able to release blessings or curses instantaneously upon someone just by word of mouth. And the reason was because the reason, according to these mystical teachers, is because their thought, their word, and their action are in complete accord. They have complete integrity in terms of how they carry themselves. And therefore, anything that comes from them immediately has power and potency. And this idea of satya is also connected to rita and dharma. The way reality, in a sense, truly is, or the harmony that we should have, an accordness we should have with the ultimate reality, with truth, with righteousness. In a sense, then, it's bringing oneself completely into accord with this ultimate reality of truth, with this ultimate reality of dharma. And we often say that it requires courage to speak the truth at all times. It requires courage to be righteous at all times. But we can flip that as well and say that it's living with truth and righteousness that actually leads someone to have courage in the first place. And the fact that, Gandhi was seen as a man of peace and harmlessness doesn't take away from the fact that he was a man with a lion's heart, with a lion's courage. And that courage would come from living with this truth, living with this righteousness, living in accord with cosmic order, living in accord with dharma, uprightness, never deviating from the truth in a sense. And these ideas also stem from the Upanishads, the deep philosophical wisdom, Vedic knowledge and wisdom of India, where you have the ideas, Tattvam Asi, thou art that, where there's an accordness with truth, with living with that ultimate reality. So truth was the moral compass for Gandhi, and I believe that it's actually living with that truth that leads to that courage. you'll find that often those that lie and deceive or live in deception or live in that crookedness find difficulty in having uprightness, courage, and honesty. So one requires the other and one supports the other in that sense. I do believe, though, that Gandhi also was pragmatic and practical in understanding that our perceptions of truth also differ between people. So while he would try to live in accord with that truth or that ultimate perspective, he understood that when it comes to conflict resolution and issues of conflict resolution, we need to also have humility in our dialogue. And we need to understand that we cannot be rigid in how we may communicate our ideas with one another if we are going to make progress in terms of conflict resolution. All right. This is Gandhi. I think this was the Salt March. So here we have the other important concept of ahimsa. And this concept is interesting because I have, as a scholar, you're also supposed to come from a critical perspective. So I sometimes contemplate the idea of ahimsa, and I think about it because even Gandhi would draw upon the Bhagavad Gita to support some of his ideas, like ahimsa. And the Bhagavad Gita, if you are familiar, is a discussion between Krishna and Arjuna about basically engaging in warfare. And Arjuna being very, not wanting to do it while Krishna impelling him to do so. So it becomes sort of ironic in a sense that one is drawing ahimsa from the Bhagavad Gita for Gandhian philosophy and Gandhian perspective. So maybe that's something that we can discuss further, and it's something that I can learn more about while we engage with one another. So ahimsa is non-violence, and it was Gandhi's means to attain truth. And I think it also needs to be associated with Gandhi's perspective of surrender, ultimate surrender. Because if one is ultimately surrendered, therein lies also the desire for ahimsa, for non-violence. And it's also the perspective of looking upon the world and reality as God itself. Therefore, everything that arises, every individual that arises from that perspective is God, whether there are no friends and there are no enemies, rather, right? Everything and everyone is God. And if you are surrendering to everything in that sense, where would there be an act of violence? So ahimsa, on the basic level, is this physical and psychological harm must be avoided, and it's rooted in the ideas of love and compassion, looking upon all creation, all sentient beings as something to be respected and protected. Now, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, we take in the ideas of ahimsa, and the Bhagavad Gita is speaking about violence, but from that perspective, it's a righteous, it's actually ahimsa as well, because it is no longer ego defined. You are not performing activities or actions based on your own desires and ego, but rather from principles of dharma and ultimate righteousness, or being in accord with cosmic order. So when one is acting from that divine perspective, then everything that they do becomes ahimsa. And that was actually surprising for me to learn that when I was learning about the Jains in India, they were actually at the forefront for centuries fighting to protect India, which I actually was quite unaware of in many ways. And so the question obviously came about, how does one live peacefully or engage in ahimsa if one is engaging in warfare? And also the question arises, when is it actually necessary to do so in this day and age? All right. So Gandhi, however, had his interpretation of ahimsa, and this led to his view of complete nonviolence in terms of his resistance. And if one looks at Hindu philosophy, Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga, you will find ahimsa as one of the primary yamas, or you have your restraints and regulations, and this is one of the fundamental principles one has to adhere to before they go further into yoga. So ultimately, all this we see a synthesis of Hindu philosophical ideas translated into a kind of sadhana or spiritual discipline that's also in alignment with popular and well-known universal ethics. So this kind of combination and synthesis is what makes the idea of ahimsa so influential in global affairs around the world, and how we engage in things like social justice. So I'm sure many are already well aware of the aspects of truth, satyagraha, and the political movements and social justice actions that Gandhi engaged in. I think Professor Kumar and Professor Govindan have already spoken about many of these things, but I just want to look again at satyagraha. We often refer to it as truth force in terms of its translation, but I find that satya being connected to graha interesting, as I was thinking about Navagraha with the 9 planets. And the belief in Hinduism is that the 9 planets have this great influence and power over our lives. In a sense, it's the grip of the 9 planets, the hold that the 9 planets have on our lives. So from that sense, how much does the truth have a grip on our own life? How connected and steered are we by truth? Just as these planets have this influence and guiding force over our lives, how much does the truth weigh in on our actions and our decisions? So this satyagraha, we find required moral courage combined with mass action. So if we are looking at things like ahimsa, someone that may be new to these concepts, or if these ideas are foreign to them, they might wonder, where is the courage in being completely nonviolent and not taking action? But in fact, for Gandhi, it required incredible courage, especially to get beaten and to not retaliate, but to continue and persist, even in the face of violence, even in the face of extreme violence. And that becomes an interesting question, is how do we translate that attitude and that view in today, where we have people that are just brutalizing others, even though they are completely non-resistant, where we see the massacre of children, and people who are completely defenseless. So how does ahimsa translate into those scenarios and situations? And it's this idea of moral courage, which is very unique to Gandhi, and we need to perhaps understand where he derives that strength and that courage from when we are engaging in social justice movies or political action in order to uplift others who are suffering and struggling, who are in war-torn regions. So we can see the long list of achievements Gandhi has engaged in. I won't repeat them because I think our previous speakers have done so. But it's really looking at how can those ideas really empower those who are struggling today, those who are in dire peril in certain regions of the world. So from Gandhi's perspective, nonviolence can dismantle systemic oppression. And he has proven that in the past, that it's a provable method. But I think, it's individuals like Gandhi who have been at the forefront, and it's those unique qualities in those individuals that have empowered those movements. But how do we, all of us as individuals, generate and find the same moral courage, the same direction, the same commitment to truth, to peace, to nonviolence? So Gandhi was also involved with social justice initiatives. We have caste reform, where Gandhi was advocating for the untouchables and trying to bring them and welcome them more into religious life, where there's social integration. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that wasn't always his view. And I think that's something we need to remember about Gandhi as well, is that he was also a human being. And some of his initial ideas may have changed over time. So the Gandhi as a young man may have been a much different individual, develops over time, where they have new ideas. So sometimes I think where there's controversy surrounding figures like Gandhi, the views don't take into account that people change over time and develop the ideas based on experience. So Gandhi also had initiatives with economic justice, where this idea of self-reliance comes to the forefront, creating self-reliant communities, where we are not also reliant on our oppressors. We have to actually look into our own societies and find out, the very people who are oppressing us are determining when we are allowed to have access to certain things. So in that sense, you have the communal self-reliance. There's also been examples of Gandhi with gender equality, especially at that time, where we had many different views compared to what we have developed over time into the contemporary era, where he would welcome women into the political struggles, which there again challenge our patriarchal norms in society. So especially at that time where we had much more rigidity about those kinds of ideas, it becomes something to think about. And then, of course, these ideas echo over the decades into our modern era, where our civil rights movements are still inspired and still moved for justice through these Gandhian philosophies and ideas. So Gandhi's perspective, nonviolence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. So remember at the beginning, I spoke about non-violence for Gandhi was actually the instrument, the tool, and the pathway to truth. And in a sense, if truth was God for Gandhi, that means that for him, non-violence and ahimsa was the pathway to God. And so it wouldn't be surprising then that he regards it as the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. So there are layers, I think, if we are going to understand or do justice to understanding Gandhi properly, I really do believe we have to look at the spiritual man, Gandhi, and that the religious views and that spiritual attitude that carried and empowered his actions. So Satya and Ahimsa ultimately are viewed as transformative tools, which were proven to reshape India itself and empower the non-resistant, non-violence resistant movement. And as you can see, again, it's rooted in those ideas of dharma, righteousness, and uprightness. And in today, we can find that these ideas also resonate with universal worldviews that can address many issues that are troubling our world today, like the climate and issues of conflict resolution. I do have questions that I am still contemplating and thinking about, and I'm trying to learn more about. Is satyagraha effective in all scenarios requiring conflict resolution and social justice today? And do we need to also, those scholars of Gandhi, do we also need to develop the idea of ahimsa to accurately represent what ahimsa is and what ahimsa may have meant for Gandhi itself and how it can be used in these movements. And then I think one of the things that needs to also be brought into alignment with Satya and Ahimsa is this idea of surrender and what surrender really meant to Gandhi and that perspective. Because if we gain a proper understanding of his approach, that again is not just something that transformed Gandhi, but could be something that can transform all of us who are trying to pursue or embody Gandhian principles in our own lives and within our own movements. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shay. I think Mr. Chetty has offered us a profound reflection on the practical application of Satya or truth and non-violence in the pursuit of social justice. And he is drawn from the Gandhian philosophy, in which he's reminded us that truth is God and non-violence is the means to reach it. He emphasized that Satya goes beyond mere honesty. It requires moral courage to live by the truth and righteousness. And in parallel, then he said that ahimsa is not simply avoiding harm, but acting without ego, in alignment with dharma. And he also, of course, pointed out to the paradox of non-violence amidst the necessary struggle, noting, for example, the role of the Jains who fought to protect India. And his interpretation of graha as grip, I found very interesting. It highlighted that satyagraha demands a strong moral hold and a deep inner courage. And I think most importantly, Mr. Chetty has challenged us to consider how the Gandhian principles can be upheld in today's violent world, especially when the vulnerable, like children and the defenseless, are under attack. So thank you very much, Mr. Chetty, for your insightful contribution, and your unique perspective, I think, adds a valuable dimension to our discussion today. Now, we are going to move into a question and answer session. But I wanted to just quickly remind ourselves of Professor Kumar's presentation, which came on earlier. And I think Professor Kumar also touched on the idea of Sarvodaya, which Dr. Govindan had done. And he connected this idea of Sarvodaya, Daya, the welfare of all, to this concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the idea that the world is one family. And he cited the equitable distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines as a living example. And I think at the core of his message was the belief that real education and sustainable change begin at the home and in schools, and that Satyam Eva Jayate, truth alone, triumphs. So, thank you once again to all of you for your contributions. We're now going to uh, entertain questions and any discussions that you might have. Uh, we did receive two questions um, through the chat group. Maybe I should do those two questions first, and then those of you who would like to ask live questions, you can raise your hands, and Rakshika will then facilitate for you to ask your questions. And panel members, you are all free to contribute answers to the questions that have been posed. So the first question that we received was from Mr. Parmesan Naidu, and he wanted to know how can we use the Gandhian module uh, to find solutions to problems in development of South African society, as well as the education infrastructure. And he, for example, he mentions building better schools. And he wants to know how can we encourage schools to adopt indigenous games to teach children as a teaching strategy. So I'm not sure if I've captured that question clearly, but if any of the panel members would like to respond to that.
Those are very important questions. And I think that the challenge is to work from the ground upwards rather than from the top. And we really have to reconsider how we develop schooling on the ground. And it's not about imposing as much as developing something with the community, with the students, a real Freirean method as well, so that the students are not seen as objects and consumers, but also take part in the whole process of education. Certainly with the indigenous games, we grew up with indigenous games, and now it's become a memory project. We have to do a lot of research and retraining and reteaching to reclaim those games that we played when we were little children.
Thank you, Dr. Govindan. Mr. Chetty, Professor Kumar, would you like to add anything to the response from Dr. Govindan?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the second question that we received through the chat box was from Mr. Pranaba, who wants to know in the contemporary world, where power players of the globe are trying to control dominance or the colonized world through different techniques of violence, is there any special Gandhian techniques to design a peaceful world where there is no clash of civilizations?
One has to do one's homework from all the different perspectives that allows you and prepares you to engage in a combative response. And civil disobedience was based and grounded on an understanding the travesties of justice. And this is part of the challenge we live in today. In South Africa, if we really want to see change and transformation, we must understand how Constitution works, basic human rights, the Bill of Rights. We have to understand this and then ask why are these not being implemented And of course, we're all guardians of the law, and we're all guardians of truth. How do we work in different ways at different levels for transformation and for real change? And this happens at the global level as well. Sadly, as we know, so much needs repair, so much needs change.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Govindan. Any other contributions? Lakshika, do we have any hands raised for live questions? Mr. Governor, Jayanathan Governor, please go ahead.
Mr. Governor.
Mr. Governor, unmute yourself and ask your question. Jayanathan, can you unmute yourself, please? So while we are waiting for Jayanathan to unmute himself and ask his question, we want to thank Hussein Vauda for the two links that he shared with us. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure the audience as well as the panel will welcome reading such informative information that you've given to us. Thank you for sharing those links. Thank you. Mr. Governor, are you ready to ask your question? Okay, Rakshika, it doesn't seem like he's getting, he's unmuting himself. Maybe if he could put his question in the chat box. Okay, so again, we have another question here from, I think it's a Mr. Maraj, I'm not sure. How does the explanation of self-defense align with Gandhi's principles and values, for example, in wars between nations, but also in personal situations? Did you get the question, panel? So how does the explanation of self-defense align with Gandhi's principles and values, for example, in wars between nations, but also in personal situations?
Could I say something?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Shay.
So it's a very difficult question, and it's not something that's actually unique to Gandhi, because it's an idea that's been presented before many mystical teachers of spiritual paths who promote the ideas of ahimsa. What do I do in a scenario where I need to defend myself, or more importantly, defend those that I love and care about? Do I just do nothing? So in those cases, that comes to the understanding of what ahimsa really means. The deeper perspective of ahimsa is not always just simply being helpless and defenseless. And there are righteous acts of defense in that case where, protecting yourself and defending yourself are not wrong. So from that perspective, it will still be ahimsa. From Gandhi's personal perspective, however, that might be different for him. Perhaps, there have been many cases and scenarios where he has actually put his life on the line and, been attacked and physically assaulted and not retaliated in that sense. And from that perspective, that was his decision and his view of ahimsa. So it's difficult to actually answer or tackle, but it may come down to the individual themselves.
And we had this discussion during the anti-apartheid period, and the whole development of the just war, which was something that the Christian churches had to grapple with and understand how it's necessary at times. And that was the dilemma of someone like Archbishop Tutu, and to support the just war when it is struggle for truth and a struggle against injustice. and there isn't always unilateral answer, but that option. So there will be points of view about being bound by faith. That's the way in which Luthuli was being understood, that his faith, his Christian faith, prevented him from violence. But one has to understand how your faith is also asking you to stand up. We had the Standing for the Truth campaigns during the apartheid era, and all that meant. And the just war can take many forms of reaction, but it's so passive resistance is not passive. And of course, it changes with the context and the time, as I was trying to suggest with Mandela.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Govindan. We have a question from David Gengen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to comment on this, on the question of the need for violence. I think it was Gandhi who said that he doesn't discount violence in terms of his interactions, but we've got to go through the process of nonviolent action first. I think the statement he made was that if he had a choice between cowardice and violence, he would choose violence. So I think there is a place and a context for it. It's a very interesting question that Mr. Chetty has raised in terms of the context today, especially in the Middle East and in Ukraine and Russia. How do you actually, implement, put into action what Gandhi was actually proposing? So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Shay, you have your hand up. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was very well put. This idea of ahimsa, first and foremost, I think, is when it's really put into action, I think it's almost always connected to courage. When it's really put into action in that sense, I think there's sometimes a view that you can hide behind concepts of peace while being cowardly. And you're actually using concepts to hide or protect your own cowardness. And there may be scenarios where you have to, you need to take action. And in that case, because of the courage that it involves, that becomes real ahimsa in that sense. It's a complicated issue, but it's something I think, like he said, if he had to choose between violence or being a coward, then he would choose the former, which showed you just how much courage and having that courage was so important for Gandhian, from a Gandhian perspective, for Gandhian philosophy. It was central to it.
Thank you. We'll take one last question, which has been posted.
May I add into it? Okay.
Sorry, Professor Kumar. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I would like to give two examples regarding that. The one is when Mahatma Gandhi's wife, Kasturba, when she was ill, she had some chest infection, tuberculosis, and the doctor advised for the goat soup. And finally, Gandhi and the Kasturba, both of them rejected it. No, we will not have the goat soup. We will have our own method to cure the tuberculosis. That is the one example. The second example, at the time of independence of South Africa, we all know that there was a big violence in the country, and Nelson Mandela stood for the non-violence, and ultimately, Nelson has to divorce her wife only on the issue of violence. So these are the comparative examples when we look at the cowardice and the violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Can I
Professor
just
Kumar.
interject?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that point. I just also want to go back to the Bhagavad Gita itself, and if anyone are familiar with the Mahabharata and the conflict, the war that was being waged between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, the very first thing that Krishna was attempting to do was to find solutions for peace and avoid the conflict and war. That was his very first move. And it was only when there was no choice, but they were forced to engage in warfare, that they did so. So that's something I think we should remember about these sort of ideas, these Hindu philosophical ideas.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chetty. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, as we draw this webinar to a close, it is clear that the enduring vision of Mahatma Gandhi, with its unwavering emphasis on truth, nonviolence, sustainability, and social transformation, continues to offer profound insights for our contemporary world, particularly for South Africa's ongoing journey towards true democracy and equality. Uh, it is compelling to consider how the philosophies of Mahatma Gandhi, as well as Nelson Mandela, are deeply intertwined and liberation, and how it might offer pathways to address the persistent challenges of racial tensions, gender insensitivities, religious strife, corruption, and power struggles that plague our world. So their unwavering commitment to dialogue, reconciliation, and the inherent dignity of all human beings serves as a powerful reminder of the transformative potential of principled leadership and collective action. And in this context, I'm reminded of the ancient wisdom of Jainism and its theory of manifoldness, which is referred to in Sanskrit as Anek Anantavad. And it offers a particular relevant lens. This philosophical stance of this theory of manifoldness, emphasizing that reality can be viewed from multiple perspectives and that seemingly contradictory viewpoints may each hold a partial truth, presents a powerful call for intellectual nonviolence. And this approach can be can be a potent cure for extremism, for dogmatism, and fanaticism, fostering peaceful mutual respect in our strife-ridden world. So, if you consider, for example, the example of taboos, instead of dismissing them as mere superstition, the principle of manifoldness encourages us to explore the potential underlying wisdom they may hold. And by engaging our students in scientific investigations, open discussions to understand or even disprove the rationale behind these cultural practices, we cultivate critical thinking and bridge different ways of knowing. And so this pluralistic attitude creates the necessary space for mutual understanding and a deeper appreciation of the diverse perspectives in our classrooms and beyond. So ultimately, I am hopeful that this webinar has illuminated the enduring power of Gandhi's vision and the potential of embracing intellectual humility and open dialogue. And by fostering a mutual desire to understand and to be understood, we can cultivate a more just, equitable, and peaceful future for South Africa and the world. So let us carry forward these insights and commit ourselves to embodying the principles of truth, non-violence, and a spirit of open inquiry in our ongoing pursuit of a better tomorrow. So I want to say thank you very much to all our speakers, Dr. Govindan, Professor Suresh Kumar, and Mr. Chetty. I'm quite intrigued by Dr. Govindan's first name, Deva Rakshanam. Deva Rakshanam means the protector of the Lords.
Yes.
And I think it could not have been a more appropriate name
Thank you.
for our dear mother,
Thank
Professor Dr. Govindan. Really, you are, you have, and you need to look at the comments that have come through for you, Dr. Govindan. You have certainly had a serious impact on people's lives, and you've made a positive influence in their lives, in the same way that God makes a positive influence in our lives. So thank you very much for keeping up to your name of Deva Rakshanam. And thank you also equally to the other presenters. And I think your diverse perspectives have enriched our understanding of Mahatma Gandhi's legacy and its relevance in South Africa's freedom. Thank you very much to the Dean and the Head of School of Education, as well as the Head of the College of Humanities, who have facilitated and made it possible for us to host this webinar. I want to thank Kurt and Rakshika for making all the necessary arrangements so that this webinar could go ahead as it was planned this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who have attended for your active participation and your thoughtful questions. And we hope that this webinar has been informative and thought-provoking. And the University of KwaZulu-Natal School of Education is committed to fostering such dialogues, and we encourage you to stay engaged with our future events. Rakshika has shared the link for those of you who would like to watch this webinar on YouTube, or you want to maybe share it with others. And thank you once again for joining us, and we wish you all a good day, and to Professor Kumar, a good evening, I believe it is in India. So thank you and all the best to you. Thank you to our speakers as
Yeah,
well.
thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
evening
And
to all.
thank you to you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.